The clock on the laboratory wall showed 11:47 p.m., but Maya barely noticed. She had been working for 14 hours straight, completely absorbed in her research. The laboratory was empty except for her, with only the quiet hum of machines and the soft glow of computer screens breaking the silence. Maya was a biochemist, someone who studied the chemistry of living things. For the past 3 months, she had been working on something extraordinary, a plant that had been discovered deep in the Amazon rainforest. This wasn't just any ordinary plant. It was unlike anything scientists had ever seen before. The plant produced special chemicals that seemed to affect how living creatures behaved around it. Animals would gather near it, almost like they were drawn by some invisible force. Local people in the Amazon had stories about this plant, calling it the spirit bridge because they believed it could connect different forms of life. Maya's job was to understand these chemicals and figure out how they worked. She had spent months carefully studying small samples, running tests, and documenting everything she discovered. The research was important because these chemicals might help create new medicines or help scientists understand how different species communicate. On this particular night, Maya was working with a batch of samples that had arrived just days before. The plant material was stored in special containers that kept the chemicals stable. She had been carefully extracting the compounds and preparing them for analysis. When something went wrong, she was reaching for a small glass container when her elbow knocked against a metal rack. The rack shook, and one of the glass vials tumbled to the floor. It happened so fast that Maya couldn't catch it. The vial shattered against the hard laboratory floor, and immediately, a strange smell filled the air. The smell was unlike anything Maya had ever encountered. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't exactly pleasant either. It was earthy and sweet, with something else mixed in that she couldn't identify. It reminded her of flowers, but also of something wild and untamed. Maya's training kicked in immediately. She knew that breathing in unknown chemicals could be dangerous. She quickly moved toward the emergency safety station, where protective masks were kept. But she was too late. In the few seconds it took her to reach the mask, she had already breathed in several lungfuls of the mysterious vapor. Her heart started beating faster. Not from fear, but from the realization that she had just been exposed to something completely unknown. She put on the mask and opened all the ventilation systems to clear the air. Then she began the cleanup process, carefully collecting every piece of broken glass and disposing of it properly, following laboratory safety rules. Maya filled out an incident report. She wrote down exactly what had happened, what time it occurred, and what substances might have been involved. She also noted that she felt fine, with no immediate symptoms. This was important because it would help doctors if she developed any problems later. As she worked, Maya tried to remember everything she knew about the plant's chemicals. The research so far had shown that they were complex molecules that seemed to affect the nervous system of animals. But all the previous tests had been done on small laboratory animals, not humans. Nobody knew what these chemicals might do to a person. After finishing the cleanup and paperwork, Maya looked at the clock again. It was past midnight and she was exhausted. She had been running on coffee and determination all day, and the accident had drained her remaining energy. She decided to call it a night and go home. Walking to her car, Maya noticed that the night air felt different somehow. Colors seemed a bit more vivid, and she could hear sounds that she normally wouldn't notice, the rustle of leaves and trees several blocks away, the distant hum of traffic, even the quiet conversations of people in nearby buildings. She attributed these sensations to being tired and stressed from the accident. When people are exhausted, their senses can sometimes play tricks on them. Maya had experienced this before during long research sessions, so she didn't think much of it. The drive home was uneventful. Maya lived in a small apartment about 20 minutes from the laboratory. It was a quiet neighborhood where she could rest and recover from long days of work. As she pulled into her parking spot, she felt a slight dizziness wash over her. Again, she blamed it on fatigue. Once inside her apartment, Maya made herself a simple dinner and tried to relax. She took a hot shower, hoping it would help her feel normal again. The warm water felt incredibly good against her skin, almost like it was washing away the stress of the day. Before going to bed, Maya called her supervisor and left a voicemail about the incident. She explained what had happened and assured him that she felt fine. She also mentioned that she had completed all the proper safety procedures and filed the required reports as she lay in bed. Maya thought about the plant and its mysterious properties. She wondered if the indigenous people of the Amazon had ever had similar accidents. Their stories spoke of the plant as something powerful and transformative, but Maya had always assumed these were just myths and legends. Little did she know that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The chemicals she had inhaled were already beginning to work their way through her system, starting a process that would transform not just her body, but her entire understanding of what it meant to be human. That night, Maya slept more deeply than she had in months, unaware that when she woke up, nothing would ever be the same again. Maya woke up feeling like she had slept for days, even though her alarm clock showed she had only been asleep for 7 hours. She stretched in bed and immediately noticed something strange. The sheets felt different against her skin, almost like she could feel every single thread. Even the morning sunlight streaming through her curtains seemed brighter and more colorful than usual at first. She thought this was just because she had gotten good sleep after such a long day. But as she got ready for work, Maya began to notice other changes that were harder to explain away in the shower. She could smell her neighbor's coffee brewing 3 apartments away. She had lived in this building for 2 years and had never noticed that smell before. When she opened her bathroom window to let out the steam, she could hear conversations from the street. Below, as clearly as if people were talking in her living room, Maya tried to convince herself that she was just more alert than usual. Maybe the accident had given her a little adrenaline boost that was making her more aware of her surroundings. She had heard that stressful events could sometimes make people's senses sharper for a while. But as she got dressed and prepared breakfast, the changes became more obvious. She could hear her upstairs neighbor's alarm clock, her downstairs neighbor's television, and even the sound of someone typing on a computer 2 floors up. It was like someone had turned up the volume on the entire world. The strangest part was that none of these sounds felt overwhelming. Instead of being annoying, they seemed to create a kind of map in her mind of everything happening around her. She could picture her neighbors going about their morning routines just by listening to the sounds they made. Maya decided to walk to work instead of driving, hoping the fresh air would help her feel more normal. The walk usually took about 30 minutes, and she often used this time to think about her research or listen to music. But today, she forgot all about her headphones. The city seemed alive in a way she had never experienced before. She could smell the different types of flowers in every garden she passed. She could detect the scent of fresh bread from a bakery that was still 6 blocks away. Even more surprising, she could somehow sense the emotions of the people around her. A man walking his dog seemed worried about something, and Maya could feel his anxiety like a cloud around him. A woman jogging past appeared to be happy and energetic, and Maya felt a burst of that same energy just from being near her. It was like she had developed some kind of emotional radar that picked up on how other people were feeling. When Maya arrived at the research facility, she noticed that the security guard at the front desk looked at her differently, would give her a polite nod, and return to his newspaper. But today, he seemed much more interested in talking to her. "Good morning, Maya," he said with a smile that seemed unusually warm. "You look really good today. Did you do something different? With your hair?" Maya touched her hair, confused. She had done nothing different with it. If anything, she had spent less time getting ready than usual because she was distracted by all the strange sensations she was experiencing. "No, nothing different," she replied. But the guard continued to smile at her in a way that made her feel uncomfortable as she walked through the hallways to her laboratory. Maya noticed that other people were reacting to her strangely too. Colleagues who usually just said hello in passing were stopping to have longer conversations. People she barely knew were finding excuses to walk past her office. Dr. Peterson, a researcher from the floor above who had never spoken to her before, suddenly appeared at her desk with a question about a project that had nothing to do with her work. He seemed to find reasons to stay and chat, even though Maya was clearly busy. "I was wondering if you might want to grab lunch today," he said, which was completely out of character for him. Dr. Peterson was known for being shy and rarely spoke to anyone outside of his own research team. Maya politely declined, explaining that she had work to catch up on. But throughout the morning, similar interactions kept happening. People seemed drawn to her in a way that felt both flattering and concerning. During her lunch break, Maya decided to do a quick experiment. She went to the cafeteria and sat at a table by herself, trying to act normally. Within minutes, her table was surrounded by colleagues who claimed they just wanted to say hello or ask about her weekend. This was definitely not normal. Maya was well liked at work, but she had never been the center of attention like this. She began to suspect that whatever had happened during last night's accident was affecting not just her, but everyone around her. The most disturbing incident happened when Maya went to get coffee from the break room. As she was adding sugar to her cup, she noticed that her hands were slightly shaking. But it wasn't from nervousness. It was like her body was vibrating with some kind of energy. Tom, a maintenance worker who was fixing a light fixture nearby, suddenly stopped what he was doing and walked over to her. He stood closer than was normal for a casual conversation and seemed to be breathing more deeply, like he was trying to catch a particular scent. "Are you wearing a new perfume?" he asked, his voice sounding different than usual. "It smells really nice." Maya wasn't wearing any perfume at all. She backed away from Tom, feeling genuinely scared for the first time since the accident. Something was definitely wrong, and it was getting worse. That afternoon, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She locked her office door and began researching everything she could find about the plant she had been studying. She needed to understand what was happening to her before it got completely out of control. As she read through research papers and old reports, Maya realized that she might be experiencing something that had never been documented in scientific literature. The plant's effects on humans were completely unknown, and she was becoming the first test subject. The thought was both terrifying and fascinating. She was a scientist, and part of her was curious about what was happening to her body. But she was also a person who just wanted to feel normal again. As the day ended, and Maya prepared to go home, she noticed that the strange effects were getting stronger, not weaker. Whatever was happening to her was just beginning, and she had no idea how to stop it. Maya couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she could hear sounds from all over her apartment building. She heard Mrs. Chen from 2 floors down watching late-night television. She could hear the couple next door having a quiet conversation about their day. Even the sound of someone brushing their teeth 3 doors away seemed as clear as if they were in her own bathroom. By morning, Maya had made a decision. She needed to find out exactly what was happening to her body, and she needed to do it without anyone else knowing. If her colleagues found out that she was experiencing these strange changes, it could ruin her career and shut down the entire research project. She arrived at work early. Before anyone else was in the building, Maya had access to the medical testing equipment in the laboratory, and she planned to use it to run tests on herself. She knew it was against safety protocols to work alone, but she didn't have a choice. The first thing she did was draw her own blood. Maya had done this procedure hundreds of times on laboratory animals, but doing it on herself felt strange and slightly scary. Her hands were steadier than she expected, and she managed to collect several small samples without any problems. Under the microscope, Maya's blood looked different from normal human blood. The red blood cells appeared to be carrying something, extra tiny particles that she had never seen before. These particles seemed to be moving with purpose. It's almost like they were alive. She ran the blood through the laboratory's chemical analysis machine, and the results were shocking. Her blood contained high levels of several hormones that shouldn't have been present in such quantities. More importantly, there were completely unknown compounds in her system, substances that didn't match anything in the scientific database. These unknown compounds were similar to the chemicals found in the plant she had been studying, but they weren't exactly the same. It was as if her body had taken the plant's chemicals and somehow changed them, creating something entirely new. Maya spent the next several hours running different tests and comparing her results to normal human blood samples. Every test confirmed the same thing. Something fundamental was changing in her body at the cellular level. The most disturbing discovery came when she tested her saliva. It contained the same unknown compounds as her blood, but in much higher concentrations. This might explain why people were reacting to her so strangely. Her body was producing chemical signals that were somehow affecting everyone around her. As Maya worked, she tried to remember everything she knew about the plants. History. She pulled up files from the original research expedition that had brought the plant samples back from the Amazon. The files contained interviews with local indigenous people who had lived near the plant for generations. According to their stories, the plant was considered sacred and dangerous. They called it the bridge between worlds and believed it could transform people into something that was neither fully human nor fully plant. The stories described individuals who had been changed by the plant and had gained special abilities, but had also lost their connection to normal human society. Maya had always assumed these were just myths and legends. It's a kind of supernatural. Stories that people tell to explain things they don't understand. But now, reading these accounts while looking at her own test results, she began to wonder if there might be some truth to them. The indigenous people described the transformed individuals as having heightened senses, the ability to communicate with plants and animals, and a strange effect on other people. They said these individuals became bridges between different forms of life, able to understand and interact with the natural world in ways that normal humans couldn't. One story particularly caught Maya's attention. It described a young woman who had accidentally consumed the plant's sap and had undergone a gradual transformation over several weeks. The woman had initially gained amazing abilities. She could predict the weather, find water in the desert, and heal sick animals just by touching them. But as time passed, the woman had found it harder and harder to relate to other people. She had become isolated from her community, not by choice, but because her presence made others uncomfortable. Eventually, she had left the village and gone to live alone in the forest, where she was said to have lived for many years as a guardian of the natural world. Maya shivered as she read this story. It felt like she was reading about her own future, and it scared her more than any of the physical changes she was experiencing. She decided to test one more thing. Maya collected samples from several plants in the laboratory's greenhouse and examined them under the microscope. To her amazement, she found that she could somehow sense the health and condition of each plant. Just by looking at it, a small fern that had been struggling to grow suddenly seemed to perk up when Maya touched it. A flowering plant that had been drooping from lack of water appeared to communicate its needs to her through some kind of chemical signal that she could now detect. This was impossible according to everything Maya knew about science. But she couldn't deny what she was experiencing. She was developing abilities that didn't exist in normal human biology. As the day progressed, Maya noticed that her effect on her colleagues was becoming stronger. People were finding more and more excuses to visit her laboratory. Some claimed they needed to borrow equipment. Others said they wanted to discuss research projects. But Maya could tell that they were all being drawn to her by something they couldn't understand or control. She started working with her door closed and tried to limit her interactions with other people. But even through the closed door, she could sense when someone was standing in the hallway outside her office. By the end of the day, Maya had reached a frightening conclusion. The plant's chemicals weren't just affecting her temporarily, they were permanently changing her DNA. She was becoming something new, something that had never existed before in recorded scientific history. The transformation was accelerating, and Maya realized that she had two choices. She could try to hide what was happening and hope that the changes would eventually stop on their own. Who might understand what she was going through? The problem was that she didn't know anyone who would believe her story, and she was afraid that if she told the truth, she would become a test subject herself. Maya went home that night knowing that she was running out of time to make a decision that would determine the rest of her life. 3 weeks had passed since the accident, and Maya's life had completely changed. She could no longer pretend that what was happening to her was temporary or that she could handle it alone. The abilities she had gained were becoming stronger every day, but they were also making it impossible for her to live a normal life. Maya had started working from home, telling her supervisor that she needed to focus on writing research reports. The truth was that she couldn't be around her colleagues anymore. The effect she had on people was becoming so strong that it was disrupting the entire laboratory. People would forget what they were doing when she walked into a room. and some had even started following her around the building. Working from home should have been a relief, but it brought its own set of problems. Maya's apartment building had become a strange place where neighbors who had never spoken to each other before were suddenly knocking on her door with random requests. Mrs. Rodriguez, from across the hall, had visited 5 times in 1 week, each time with a different excuse. First, she needed to borrow sugar. Then she wanted to ask about the building's recycling policy. By the 5th visit, she was just standing in the hallway, claiming she could smell something wonderful coming from Maya's apartment. The elderly man from downstairs had started leaving small gifts outside her door, flowers from his garden, homemade cookies, even a hand-carved wooden bird. When Maya tried to return the gifts, he would just smile and say that he felt compelled to make things for her. Even the building's maintenance staff was acting strangely. The superintendent had found reasons to check her apartment's heating system 3 times in 2 weeks, even though nothing was wrong with it. He would linger in her living room, breathing deeply and talking about how peaceful her apartment felt. Maya realized that she was unintentionally affecting everyone around her, and she felt terrible about it. These people weren't acting like themselves because of something she couldn't control. It was like she had become a magnet for human attention. She didn't know how to turn it off. The most difficult part was dealing with her family. Maya's parents lived in the same city, and they had always been close. Her mother called her every few days, and her father would drop by unannounced with groceries or just to chat. But now, even these simple interactions had become complicated. During a phone call with her mother, Maya noticed that her voice seemed to have a calming effect that was too strong to be natural. Her mother, who was usually energetic and talkative, became unusually relaxed and dreamy during their conversations. She would ask the same questions multiple times and seemed to forget parts of their conversation when her father visited. He would sit in her living room for hours, claiming he felt more relaxed in her apartment than anywhere else. He would cancel his other plans just to stay longer, which worried Maya because her father was usually very busy and never changed his schedule for anyone. Maya started avoiding her family's calls and visits, making excuses about being busy with work. She hated lying to them, but she was afraid of what might happen if they spent too much time around her. The last thing she wanted was to affect the people she loved most. The loneliness was becoming overwhelming. Maya had always been social and enjoyed spending time with friends and family. Now, she was trapped in her apartment, afraid to go out because of how she affected others. She felt like she was becoming a prisoner of her own condition, but the isolation also gave Maya time to explore the extraordinary abilities she was developing. She had filled her apartment with plants, and she was learning to communicate with them in ways that seemed impossible. She could sense when they needed water, when they were getting too much sunlight, or when they were fighting off insects. One morning, Maya discovered that she could somehow encourage her plants to grow faster and healthier just by touching them. A small herb garden on her windowsill had grown into a lush mini-forest in just a few days. Her neighbors began commenting on the amazing smells of flowers and herbs that seemed to be coming from her apartment. Maya also found that she could predict the weather with incredible accuracy. She would wake up knowing exactly when it would rain, how strong the wind would be, and whether there would be storms. This knowledge came to her through subtle changes in air pressure and humidity that she could now detect with her enhanced senses. Animals were drawn to her as well. Stray cats began gathering outside her apartment building, and birds would perch on her fire escape for hours at a time. Even insects seemed to behave differently around her, moving in patterns that almost looked like they were trying to communicate. These abilities were fascinating and sometimes useful. But they also made Maya feel less human every day. She was becoming something else, something that existed between the human world and the natural world. And she didn't know if she liked what she was becoming. The breaking point came when Maya's younger brother David decided to visit her unexpectedly. He was worried because she had been avoiding the family for weeks, and he wanted to make sure she was okay. When Maya opened her door and saw him standing there, she felt a wave of panic. David stepped into her apartment and immediately seemed to relax in a way that was completely unnatural. His eyes became unfocused, and he started talking about how amazing her apartment smelled and how peaceful he felt. Within minutes, he was asking if he could stay longer and suggesting that they should spend more time together. Maya watched her brother's personality change before her eyes, and she realized that she couldn't keep living like this. She was affecting everyone around her, and it was only getting worse. She needed help, and she needed it soon. That night, Maya made a decision that terrified her. She would tell Dr. Rodriguez, her mentor and the head of the research department, about what had happened to her. It was risky because it might end her career and expose her to scientific scrutiny. But she couldn't handle the situation alone anymore. Maya spent the night writing a detailed report about her condition, including all the test results and observations she had made. She knew that once she shared this information, there would be no going back. Her life would never be the same. But she hoped that Dr. Rodriguez might have answers that could help her find a way to live with what she had become. Maya sat in Dr. Rodriguez's office, her hands shaking as she held the thick folder containing all her research about her condition. I'd spent the entire morning pacing around her apartment, trying to find the courage to make this meeting happen. Now, facing her mentor across the familiar wooden desk, Maya felt like she was about to jump off a cliff. Dr. Rodriguez was a woman in her 50s who had been studying plant biology for over 20 years. She had always been kind to Maya, treating her more like a daughter than just another researcher. But Maya had no idea how she would react to what she was about to hear. "Maya, you've seemed worried about something for weeks now," Dr. Rodriguez said gently. "What's going on? You can tell me anything." Maya took a deep breath and began to explain everything that had happened since the night of the accident. She told Dr. Rodriguez about the broken vial, the strange sensations she had experienced, and the way people had started acting around her. She showed her the test results from her blood work and explained about her growing abilities to communicate with plants and predict the weather. As Maya spoke, she watched Dr. Rodriguez's expression carefully. She expected to see disbelief or concern, but instead, her mentor's face showed something that looked almost like recognition. When Maya finished her story, Dr. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to her filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder that looked like it had been there for years. "Maya," she said softly, "you're not the first person this has happened to." Maya felt her heart stop. "What do you mean?" Dr. Rodriguez sat back down and opened the folder. Inside were medical reports, photographs, and documents that looked like they had been carefully hidden away. "We've been studying this plant for 15 years, not 3 months like you were told. And in that time, there have been 7 other cases of researchers being exposed to its chemicals." Maya stared at the documents, her mind racing. 7 other people. What happened to them? Each case was different, Dr. Rodriguez explained. The plant's effects seemed to depend on the person's individual biology and the amount of exposure they received.
Ow.
Some people experienced minor changes that faded over time. Others went through transformations similar to what you're describing. Dr. Rodriguez pulled out a photograph of a man in his 30s standing next to a garden that looked impossibly lush and healthy. "This is Dr. Williams. He was exposed to the plant's chemicals 8 years ago. Like you, he developed the ability to communicate with plants and had a strong effect on people around him." "Where is he now?" Maya asked. "He's living in a research facility in Oregon where he helps us understand how to safely study the plant. He's happy there, and he's learned to control his abilities. He even has a family now. His wife is also a researcher who understands his condition." Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. She wasn't alone, and there were others who had learned to live with similar changes. "But why didn't anyone tell me about this when I started working with the plant?" Dr. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. "Because the government funding for our research depends on keeping these cases secret. If the public knew that this plant could transform people, there would be panic. Some people would want to destroy all our research, while others would want to use the plant for dangerous purposes." She pulled out another document. "But we've been working on something that might help you. We've developed a treatment that can't reverse the changes completely, but it can help people gain control over them. It's not a cure, but it's a way to live normally while keeping the abilities you've gained." Maya looked at the document, which described a series of treatments involving carefully controlled doses of other plant compounds. "Is it safe? We've tested it on 3 of the other affected researchers, and all of them have had positive results." They can now choose when to use their abilities and when to suppress them. They can live normal lives while also using their gifts to help with our research. Maya felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. What would the treatment involve? It's a series of injections over several months, combined with meditation and exercises designed to help you control your abilities. You would also work with Dr. Williams and the others to learn techniques for managing your effect on people. Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward. But Maya, I need you to understand something. This treatment will change you permanently. You'll never be exactly the same person you were before the accident. You'll always have these abilities, but you'll have control over them. Maya thought about her options. She could continue hiding in her apartment, becoming more isolated as her abilities grew stronger. Or she could accept the treatment and learn to live as something new, not fully human, but not completely separate from humanity either. There's something else, Dr. Rodriguez continued. We need people like you to help us understand this plant better. Your unique perspective could help us develop safer ways to study it and maybe even find medical applications for its properties. You could become a bridge between normal humans and the natural world. Maya realized that this was exactly what the indigenous stories had described, people who became bridges between different forms of life. But unlike the woman in the story who had been forced to live alone in the forest, Maya would have support and community. I want to try the treatment, Maya said. And I want to help with the research. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. I was hoping you would say that. We'll start the treatment next week, and I'll introduce you to the other researchers who've been through this. You'll find that they're an amazing group of people who've learned to use their abilities for good. Over the following months, Maya underwent the treatment and worked with Dr. Williams and the others to learn control techniques. She discovered that she could turn her abilities on and off like a switch, allowing her to interact normally with her family and friends while still being able to communicate with plants and predict weather when needed. Maya also found a new purpose. In her work, she became the lead researcher on a project to develop plant-based medicines using her ability to understand what different plants needed to produce their most beneficial compounds. Her unique perspective led to breakthroughs that helped create new treatments for various diseases. Most importantly, Maya learned that being different didn't mean being alone. She had found a community of people who understood her experiences and supported her journey. She had also discovered that her transformation, while unexpected and frightening, had given her gifts that could help make the world a better place. Years later, Maya would look back on the night of the accident as the moment her real life began. She had become something new, not fully human, but not separate from humanity either. She was a bridge between worlds, and she had learned to love what she had become.